Welcome back to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I am really happy to tell you that Dr. Quinton Hennigh is with us once again, this time to give us an update on Oro Resources. Quinton is now the non-executive co-chairman of the company that he built, and he is also full-time with Crescat Capital, where he provides very valuable advice to that firm to help them select exploration companies with the potential to outline world-class gold and silver deposits. I know many years that I've known Dr. Hennigh, he's not interested in tiny little projects. He's looking for the big guys, and he very often is involved in finding them. And he's going to be here in the next segment as well, to cover some of the others companies that he's provided some advice on. Quinton, thanks for joining me again.
Absolutely, always a pleasure, Jay.
It's always a pleasure to have you as well. I maybe should just mention for those that, well, I think everybody knows Novo by now, but it's NVO in Toronto, NSRPF in the U.S., 246 million shares. I saw it earlier today at $1.20 in U.S. money, giving it a market cap of around $300 million in U.S. money, but it's also noteworthy that the company has some very significant assets as well. That is liquid assets in the form of cash and marketable securities. I don't know, by my count, it looks like something on the order of 160 million US dollars, something like that. And so the company is well funded, and it's got lots going on. So let's get started with now a new producer. Novo is a new producer. We've been covering it for many years before it produced, but now it's producing. It announced production of 14,890 ounces in the second quarter of this year, and 18,000. It boosted that to 18,144 ounces in Q3. But the market was expecting something higher, I think, maybe somewhat disappointed. Although for the many years I've been covering companies, I know that new producers almost never go straight up. They always have some startup issues. And so the Beaton's Creek project that Novo put into production would be no exception. There is a shortfall of due primarily, as I understand, Quinton, to lower head grades, and the company was going to try to resolve that by tighter spaced pre-production drilling, I think on 10-meter centers. How are things going in that regard? I mean, are you seeing some results, positive results from like a tighter spacing?
Certainly, we are, Jay. So to give everybody a little background, we started production around mid-February of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest challenge we had initially was around grade control. The laboratory that we had worked out to do our grade control assaying simply got backed up, mainly due to a shortage of people. Like the preparation of samples was probably the biggest bottleneck. But long story short, we had to be light on our toes and implement visual grade control. Not ideal for any deposit, especially when you're starting. So, that had challenges in itself. But we managed to kind of get things heading in the right direction by July of this year. Now, part of that, that transition is, or not transition, but I guess a learning exercise around visual grade control was we were mining different reefs at different times, different layers of conglomerate at different times. And what we found is that in different layers and different areas, there are subtleties that have to be recognized, I guess, thickness of the bed, and then, its lateral continuity and so forth. And so, that imparted some further challenges. But what we decided to do was get our laboratory issue worked out. So in May, we signed an agreement with Intertek to put our grade control samples through the Chrysos machine that they had purchased there. Now, they had purchased one, and then the second one was installed about a month or two later. So by mid-year, we started to get routine assays coming out from the assay lab, which was really, really helpful. Now, initially, the team on site targeted 20-meter spacings to try to get a handle on things. They were actively mining. You can't just simply park everything up and not do anything. So they got their 20 by 20 spacing holes in place in some critical areas, and assays back by, say, October, maybe early October. But even with that, it was recognized that 10 by 10 meter control was needed. So they've been very aggressively drilling on 10 by 10 meter spacing now, and that's given a great deal of higher resolution on exactly where each bed is and how to mine it. That has resulted in a better success here in the past few weeks. I've noticed the grade steadily increasing.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, is they are mining the M1 and M2 in certain areas too, which is very helpful. They're very sheet-like and continuous conglomerates. So overall, we're seeing a dramatic improvement in the grade control issues that we face. I think from here on out, the guys with 10 by 10 meter space drill grade control drilling, they should be in a good position to effectively minimize dilution. Now that said, we are still mining new areas every day that goes along. We get into new parts of the ore body. We're up on Golden Crown Hill right now, which is a pretty complicated area, but the guys seem to have their eye tuned into things, and with these 10 by 10 results as they come back, I think they'll be able to stay on top of things. So I'm very optimistic there.
Yeah, I think it's noteworthy, Quinton, if I understand the financials, despite these difficulties, it was pretty much an operating. You weren't suffering losses on an operating cash flow, if I understand the numbers. You were,
Yeah, we were treading water. I mean,
yeah.
There were months where we made pretty good money, and then there were other months where we had to. Well, for example, we had to build the tailings lift, which is a capital item in itself, so a sustaining capital item. So, the company's been basically treading water or the operation's been treading water in terms of cash flow.
Sure.
Today. We do expect that to improve going forward. It's like I said, it really turning a corner here lately, and I'm very optimistic. And it's to the point now where our exploration team, is kind of given the green light to go ahead and be very aggressive, with spend on exploration. And that's really our next main thrust, is to make sure that we start exploring the district and even other areas of the Pilbara.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere one of the corporate PowerPoint presentations that the company still has a target, or at least a desire to produce upwards to 100,000 ounces a year from Beaton's Creek. Obviously, production levels thus far fall short of that. But the point is that, as you just said, you started exploring aggressively out and around Beaton's Creek as well, right? Maybe you could talk about that, because you've had some pretty outstanding numbers that I've seen come across from different areas, out, close to, I think within, fairly close to Beaton's Creek.
Yeah, Beaton's Creek is the deposit in the conglomerate, and that's really part of the greater Nullagine Gold Project. So we have this area around the town of Nullagine, in which we kind of class it as near mine or near production type exploration, and that includes a lot of new targets that we're finding out in the Mosquito Creek area, which is to the east of Beaton's Creek. And we have had some very good results here lately. We had some announced a few weeks ago from the Genie prospect, which is only 3 kilometers north of the mill. So, very low-hanging fruit. And then other targets. And now recently we've been drilling at Parnell Vulture, which is a very large target that we have identified through soil sampling and geologic work, really sound geologic work. And we're drilling 15,000 meters there. So we've announced that to the market. The goal of all of this is to put together basically a longer mine life. And, we want to be in this camp for a long time. So we're looking at tackling basically every exploration opportunity we can see within reason around the mill.
Mm-hmm. How close are those to the mill, Genie and Parnell? And I think there's another one, Hemi?
Yeah, let's pick them apart. So Genie is only 3 kilometers north of the mill. Parnell's about 35 or 40 kilometers by road to the northeast of the mill, and it's easily within transport distance. And then the Hemi target, which that's actually de Grey's target, the area that we're exploring on we'll call it Hemi Trend, is a belt of rocks that's way over by Port Hedland. So it's not really impactful for the immediate production at Nullagine, but it's certainly a really robust target or targets, I should say, that we've identified here recently.
Mm-hmm. Your focus had been until recently almost exclusively on conglomerate hosted gold. Is that changing?
It's changing in the sense that we are recognizing some basement targets that we think are well worth going after. Part of the issues around working in certain areas, getting native title and heritage work done. We're being very patient and diligent and trying to work with our Aboriginal partners in these areas. And so, sometimes our priorities shift to areas that we can see can be advanced sooner. So the area around this Hemi trend that I mentioned is kind of just north of the reserve in that area. So we think we can move that forward a little bit quicker. We're also moving the area around Comet Well and Purdy's Reward forward. We're doing that mechanical sorting test work here shortly. But we've also identified some new targets. There is a lot of activity in the Pilbara, I guess. What I would say is that we kind of blaze the trail for others to start exploring, and other are coming in. Not necessarily just gold either. You're seeing lithium is very big, of course, iron ore always, but we're also seeing nickel discovery. So we recognize that geology basically underlies our land position in places. We've got around 13,000 square kilometers, so it's not surprising to have some of these other potentials.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, very interesting. Battery metals.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I know your focus. I know you're a gold guy, Quinton, and I know you're not going to stray too far from gold. But if there's the opportunities there, you certainly that would be great.
I think we're looking at it as a value add. Like it might not even be us that necessarily advances some of these other targets, but we're trying to identify some targets that maybe we bring in another partner or something. Some of them we tackle ourselves, at least to a degree or something. It's up for debate right now, but we do want to inform our shareholders that we do have a lot of the potential that others have seen across this region.
I've got to ask you about mechanical sorting because in my mind that is potentially very, very big for Novo. How's that going? And could you give our listeners a sense of what it might mean? I know that I think you're going to a larger scale right now. You're testing it. Earlier scales looked extremely impressive and successful. But could you just talk a little bit about mechanical sorting?
Absolutely.
And where you're going with that?
Yeah, certainly. We put out a news release on mechanical sorting test work. We'll call it field level test work that we're undertaking a couple of weeks ago. And the machine is now installed at Nullagine, so it's basically we had constructed the machine and all its peripheral equipment right next to the existing mill there at Nullagine. It simply makes it easier for us, I guess, to permit and operate there. We've got a whole bunch of bulk samples that were discussed in the news release from various projects that we have across the Pilbara. So we got stuff from Comet Well and Egina and Talga, and even Beaton's Creek and stuff. So we're going to put those samples through over the next few weeks here. They are basically in place, and I think most of the material has been crushed and is screened and is ready for the test work. And I can't tell you exactly where they're at this second, but I know that that's a main initiative over the next few weeks before Christmas.
Yeah, it could really be very significant, I think. And with regard to Egina, I think that you mentioned, I think there's maybe an orogenic target there next to it, but it won't interfere, as I understand, with the existing target that you were looking at.
That's correct. Look, this Hemi trend, we'll call it, is a basement-hosted gold system. It's associated with a certain type of intrusives that are called sonicotoids, a little bit odd name, but basically they're gold-rich intrusions that seem to have generated some pretty stout gold deposits like De Grey has. We have that trend on our ground, and we will explore, but it does not impact our ability to operate the gravels, the near-surface gravels in that area.
Very good. All right. So we got to go to break now, but what could you... I guess investors just need to keep their eyes on the news releases. There's a lot of things you'll have coming out.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of exploration news, the mechanical sorting, of course, but we'll also have some updates around production out of Beaton's Creek as far as what the future is going to look like. So we're able to start talking here soon about forecasts of what to come and how we're going to build production from here forward.
Very good. Excellent. Welcome back to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and Dr. Quinton Hennigh is back with us after the break to talk about some of my favorite stories, companies that are sponsors of the show, also companies all of which I have purchased shares of, and they are also favorites in my newsletter, Jay Taylor's Gold, Energy, and Tech Stocks. So thanks for staying with us, Quinton. And I'd like to ask you, first of all, about Oro Resources. This is a company that's exploring a massive silver tin-rich polymetallic deposit in Bolivia. It's hosted in several breccia pipes. I think a couple of them that you've pierced into so far, but maybe there's more targets there as well. But as I understand it, this is a huge bulk mineable target, very rich in silver and tin. And so just give us an overview of that.
Certainly. Look, this region of south central Bolivia is geologically is very interesting because the magmas that came up, these are, it's part of the Circum-Pacific Arc. Basically it's an area where there's been long-lived subduction, where the oceanic crust has been drawn underneath the continental crust. And in that process, you generate a lot of melts. And for some reason, in this area, the melts are rich in many, many different metals. They basically have a whole host of metals that you would find across the periodic table, including tin and silver in this case, but also lead, zinc. Now they're seeing copper at the Porco zone and gold. Actually some pretty impressive gold out of the recent assays they got at the Porco target. Which is really just a subset of the greater Eskay property here. It's really shaping up to be, a truly world-class system.
And this is a resource. I think they're going to announce, so they'll be putting together a resource sometime in the not-too-distant future, I believe.
Yes. If you look at the drilling done to date, I think they have 3 rigs operating, and the drilling they've done to date has largely focused up and around the Santa Barbara area, which is where the company first encountered some long intervals of silver, lead, zinc, and tin mineralization, starting, I think, back in January. And you can see, in fact, I'm quite impressed. Like Bill and Osvaldo are definitely focusing a lot of drilling up in that region. They've done some geophysics and indicate the system's wide open up there. And I'm going to, hold my breath because I think what they're saying is that basically every time they drill a hole, they still can't find the edge of this thing, which is just remarkable. Yeah, it is. It's an amazing system. So very anxious to see where that resource lands. Right now, I think the box that they've drawn around, this targeted initial resource area is something on the order of 1.5 or maybe up to 2 kilometers long, and it's about 600 meters wide, or maybe even more than that at this point. And it extends down about 600 meters. So you can imagine. I mean, that's a lot of rock that they're tackling. It's not to say that every cubic meter inside that's going to be mineralized. I'd say, looking at the drill intercepts, probably in the order of 30 or 40%, maybe up to 50% in some holes, is reportable in terms of mineralization. So, but that's still an absolutely exceptional result. Porco, the area that they've sampled here recently, way down at the south end, so we're talking like 2.5 kilometers, and they're seeing high gold and copper and even higher tin grades. I mean, it's astounding. So it looks like the system, like the hottest part of the system, which is usually where you find the gold and tin and copper, is actually down in that area, and that just makes you start to think, wow, now. We've got not only the Santa Barbara area, but everything in between. It's absolutely immense.
Is it likely then, as you say, they keep stepping out and keep finding mineralization? Is it possible that there will be a delay then in terms of the initial resource, or are they just drawing a border around what they're going to report?
Well, that's a good question. I think Bill is down in the country right now. He's kind of going through a review, and I'll be anxious to see where they land with that. I guess my advice, sometimes companies get a bit aggressive about putting a resource out, and they kind of forget, the bigger picture. I don't think Bill's that kind of guy, so I'm not too worried. Mm-hmm. But if he says, let's keep drilling here or there or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up forestalling the resource a little bit, mm-hmm. just to get some more drilling in.
Sure. Well, I think 62.1 million shares, only $2.83, $175 million market cap. Given the sort of size of this thing, and I don't know, we don't have time to go through too many more because we have more companies to talk about. But in terms of tin could be a very valuable part of this. Silver and tin primarily at this point, right?
Absolutely, silver and tin, but in other areas, the lead zinc is very important, and now copper and gold.
Oh, crazy stuff. All right, Hannan Metals, HAN and HANNF in the U.S., 92 million shares, only 20 cents, the lowest market cap company that we'll talk about. Hannan Metals exploring a vast sedimentary hosted copper-silver mineralization in Peru. Give us the overview of this one.
Yeah, look, I'll give you the two-minute version. Basically, they're looking at a copper-silver system, very different than most people are used to. This is a sedimentary hosted copper silver system. It is hosted by black shales, and it's very extensive. It's on the east side of the Andes. There is folding in the region, so you see these rocks come up, and then they go down into the subsurface over and over again. But these guys have done work across a very large area at Tavolosis that's confirmed this thing is extremely extensive, on the order of tens to even hundreds of kilometers across. So the San Martin Copper Project is really shaping up to be something potentially world-class. Now, they also have a belt of porphyries, again, on the east side of the Andes. These are something we call alkaline porphyries. They're richer in gold. Very early stage, but I do know they're doing work there too, to just try to identify, what areas are the most prospective for the copper gold porphyry. So very anxious to see where that lands.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm wondering about a little bit is Peru, the new political situation there. It hasn't been terribly positive towards mining. That's just one thing. I don't know if you have any opinion. Maybe that's more a better question for Michael Hudson of the company, but I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I have a comment. I know a lot of people in a lot of companies. We have a lot of investments down there, so we watch it fairly closely. I would say that Peru has had a sustained mining industry for several decades, and I'd be surprised if that gets disrupted. I think their economy basically is, in part driven by minerals.
Sure.
But, it's not to keep people from doing goofy things from time to time, and politicians are the goofiest people on the planet. So,
well, we can say that again.
They came out and said some things the other day, and then they quickly tried to walk them back, and, anyway, it's politicians.
Yeah, politicians, both sides of their mouth. That's typical. So, so Eskay Mining, really, really exciting story. Now, this is a $400 million market cap based on the numbers this morning, $2.45 U.S., 162.5 million shares. But my goodness, this company is really exploring what looks like, like the Eskay Creek project. Just give us an overview of where this company's at now, this polymetallic, really a VMS project.
Yeah, look, this company should be thought of as hosting a district, not just a particular target. The drilling this year tested a number of areas, including TB and Jeff, which were partially drilled last year. And this year, I think the results we're seeing are very outstanding. They're really a great expansion of what we understood from last year. So recently, the company announced some very long intercepts, 90 to 140 meters of 2.6, 2.7 gram gold equivalent in the stockwork zone to the feeder of the VMS. We're waiting some assays from the actual massive sulfide itself, which is very intriguing. But beyond that, the company has identified and now drilled a number of other VMS targets down south. This Vermilion target, C10, those were drilled this year. We're anxiously awaiting results from those. And then they've identified boots on the ground work up in the northeast, a new area called Scarlet Ridge, which is just an absolutely immense VMS system, very similar in the stratigraphy to the Eskay Creek deposit, which is about 7 kilometers west. Again, we're very excited. I think this is a story that will absolutely be one of the front runners in terms of Canadian exploration stories over the next few years.
And there's more assays coming out from this year's drilling, I think, right?
Yeah, look, only I think 5 holes out of 98 have.
Okay.
So we have tons of assays.
So we should be getting a lot of news through the winter months here before the company goes back to work. And how soon can they get to work in the next year?
Yeah, look, the target, we had meetings last week. We were targeting early June this year to get in, perhaps in the lower areas, and then try to expand. We got about 23,000 meters done this year. We would like to get well north of 30,000 meters done next year, so that might mean a bit more aggressive approach, earlier start, later finish. Maybe even more rigs at some point. Don't know yet, but we want to be aggressive. This is a winner.
I should mention that you are involved either directly as an advisor to these companies or as an advisor in any event with Crescat Capital, because each of these companies, I believe, Crescat has an interest in as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
All right. Labrador Gold, next door to one of the most outstanding new gold discoveries in North America, I would say Newfound Gold's amazing discovery, and its Queensway project. This is the Kingsway project. It's just adjacent to and along the same belt of rocks as Newfound's Queensway project. So the Kingsway project is being explored, and we did have the company on this show just recently. I think they're having some pretty nice success, but so far, I'm thinking of a half a meter of 76.24 grams per ton. It's a pretty nice number, but so far I haven't had the same sort of longer intersections, I think, that Newfound has had. But just give us your overview of Labrador.
Certainly. Look, Lab is situated just like Newfound along the Appleton Fault Corridor. This is a north-northeast trending fault structure, and then the secondary structures, these are the smaller structures that come off, are actually the ones that host mineralization. What we're seeing at Lab is basically the same style of mineralization they see down at Newfound. It's not a big surprise. We're talking, same structure, same system, basically. But they haven't found the big structure, like the big, 10 plus meters type structure yet on their side of the property. Now, that said, the company is now exploring through drilling areas east of the Appleton Fault. And if you look at all the bigger discoveries that Newfound has made, they are all east of the Appleton Fault. So the premise is that now that they're drilling on the east side, they might turn up some wider intercepts here at some point. One area that I kind of focus on is this Golden Glove target. They had identified a couple of months ago. It's immediately north of the property boundary, and it's immediately east of the Appleton Fault. And they got samples there at surface over 300 grams per ton. I'm very hopeful that they will find a new high grade discovery. And look, Newfound, I'll put a plug in there. They've also got a new discovery called Big Dave, which is immediately south of the property line. So I think I think the high grade basically straddles that property line.
Interesting. And of course, Newfound has an interest in Labrador as well. I believe they own some shares in Labrador.
That's correct. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yes.
So Labrador, I've got it selling at 68 cents U.S. money earlier today, 153.7 million shares. U.S. market cap a little over $100 million. So certainly if there's some big numbers coming down the pike, there's a lot of room on the upside for these shares, I would guess. And last but not least, and I know you're going to be with us next week to talk about Lion One Metals, an alkaline deposit, as you've identified it. Certainly a story that I was watching over the years, but always seemed a little bit small, very high grade, and this is the Tuvatu project in Fiji. But now I think with your input, it's come to be realized that this is a much bigger system than what management might have first envisioned. And the company is moving towards production, right?
That's correct. So they've got the exploration continuing, particularly on the high-grade feeder. They've been drilling at depth. It is very exciting because, that high-grade feeder is shaping up to be a bit wider in terms of its true width, and as far as grades, it's considerably higher than some of the lodes above. So very aggressive exploration continues there. They're also doing a lot of infill drilling in preparation for mining. They are looking at building a modest scale mine in the next couple of years, and that would be it would be an expandable mine. It's basically a scalable mine. So the idea is to kind of do this at a test level initially, but be also ready to expand production. Now, look, I'll talk more about that next week. I don't want to spoil that punchline just yet.
Yeah, but 86 cents, 156 million shares, $135 million market cap. LIO is the symbol. LOMLF in the U.S. is. I purchased it, and certainly, I mean, I think one of the headline numbers that I saw recently, 3.9 meters of 33 grams, and it was underneath some really high numbers underneath their existing resource, I believe, right? So,
yes, that's correct.
It's really a lot of exciting stories, Quinton, that you're working on, and I know Crescat Capital. I should tell our listeners, and I put a plug in for Crescat Capital as well, and people that follow a good number of the stories that I follow in my newsletter are followed and invested in by Crescat. And you put out, you and the two gentlemen you work with there, put out a wonderful product every Friday, almost every Friday, unless for some reason you can't do it. Crescat gets active videos, and usually, you start out with a macroeconomic view and the market view, and then you come in with your exploration intelligence and how the projects and the nature of the projects. And I think it's just a wonderful service that you provide on YouTube. So I want to thank you for that, and Tavi and your people there that are doing such a great. It's just.
Look, it's a pleasure, Jay. It's actually one of the most enjoyable things that I look forward to Friday every week. It's fun. We won't have it this week, so I don't want to get people's hopes up. I'm up in Seattle. Kevin and Tavi are taking a well-deserved break with their families, but we'll be back next week.
Well, it's Thanksgiving weekend and Thanksgiving week, so I guess that makes a certain amount of sense. Quinton, I want to thank you very much for joining us today and an extended time frame with you. It's really good to have you, and it's always appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay.